And then he said to me, whoever you are is who I am. Are you willing to bless others when they don't deserve it? And I'm like, yeah, of course, you know. So when I said that, he put me on blast and pointed out somebody in my life that was very close to me that had kept screwing me over, and that I had given up on. And I said, I'm not helping the person anymore. They keep screwing me over. And so he pointed that out to me. And he said, well, what about this person? And I was like, damn, okay. Uh, all right, you're really putting me on and I'm like, what are you saying to me? That what whoever I am is what I receive. Whoever I am is who I believe God is too. If I am somebody who is judging, if I am somebody who believes in justice and punishment, and so how many times do people think like, oh, all these bad things keep happening to them because they're not obviously not doing the right thing. Their God's trying to show them something or a lesson or whatever it is. Like any of those thoughts are who we also believe God is to us.
My guest today is Amazing Robyn. They don't call her Amazing Robyn for nothing. The clandestine healer whose reputation precedes her. For many years, Robyn has been quietly working behind the scenes as a foresight consultant for high level government officials, providing guidance and advice in preparation for catastrophic events. Her impressive client roster includes royal families, government officials, Hollywood elites, and global business leaders, all of whom keep her services under wraps like a prized secret. Robyn's journey began as a humble gospel teacher, but she quickly ascended to the ranks of the most revered oracles in the world. She's been featured on globally recognized platforms such as National Geographic, CNN, BBC, and the Discovery Channel, as well as making appearances on news specials in France and Timeline Films in the UK. Thousands of radio shows and podcasts have also featured Robyn's expertise. Robyn is the ultimate secret weapon for both individuals and companies. Hailed as a seer and divine in her gift, she possesses an unmatched ability to detect past, present, and future blocks that may be affecting people and businesses. Her extensive experience in serial entrepreneurship, education, holistic medicine, quantum physics, frequencies, mathematical codes, and energetic medicine, along with her expertise in retraining the brain, has made her transformational breakthroughs legendary. Additionally, she is a trained sniper, NRA certified firearms instructor, and survival instructor, and a combination of her oracle abilities sets her apart from the rest. They don't call her Amazing Robyn for nothing. Well, that is certainly true, Robyn. That is impressive. And I'm feeling very blessed to have you here and to get to spend some time with you. Thank you for joining me.
Absolutely. Thank you. It's quite a bit of a background. I'm glad that you went through it all.
Yeah.
It's sometimes I can't even talk about it or speak about it. A lot of people don't even know my full background because it's a lot. And it's really because I would see things in the future and then I would have fear about it. So then I would train for it. And so that's where all those different skill sets started to come from. And so anything that I ever had a fear about or a premonition about, I just would study and train and get educated and get certified in it. So then I could give advice and counsel even more for the things that I was seeing. So that's kind of where that extensive background came from.
Wow. And so you have these abilities, a gift, to help people realize their energetic blocks. Tell me more about that and how you got started or interested in that.
Sure. Well, where things really got it started for me with like premonitions and gifts, was I would say is definitely from when I was a kid. But I just assumed everybody was that way. And I would see things like something as innocent as a squirrel, and I'd think, oh, there's something wrong with the squirrel's vision, and he's going to fall. And then he would fall. And I just thought that that was normal. And then my parents actually became pretty concerned about me as I got a little bit older and was talking about events. They thought I was depressed or something was wrong. Um, so I didn't really talk about it into my 20s. And then as my gifts started to change, I started to get a lot more like dreams and visions. And I was always very close to God. Even as a young child, I went to church by myself. My family didn't go. I was always asking questions. I annoyed every preacher and every reverend and every bishop because I had so many questions about God and how God became God. And I was very alone and isolated in that ability. But when I really started to gain traction in my career is about a week before the earthquake in Japan. I had predicted that, and I had basically had warned some of my partners that were the big boys in the industries for building bunkers and doing survival communities. And we had positioned ourselves so much within 3 days of that earthquake that it gained traction on CNN, and they wanted to know how. How did they know? And they said Robyn Peterson. And so that's where everything started to kind of take off, where I was more in the public eye versus in the secret. And so that got me as much as negative as positive feedback from the world. But the spiritual gifts, what I will say is that once you have one, you can have them all. You're not limited to one, you're not limited to two, but really it's a matter of seeking it out and really trying to develop it in so many different ways with God, with yourself, with training, with studying, meeting with other people in the world to develop your gifts. So I have a so much different training when it comes from reprogramming the brain to holistic medicine. One of my gifts when it comes to it, seeing blocks in people, like you asked, is if I have permission, I always ask for permission first. That's really key. I very rarely will just approach someone. I think it's inappropriate and it's invasive and it's an invasion of privacy. But if somebody wants me to take a look, I can see if they have cancer, why they have cancer, what they're thinking in their brain, when it started. So I can track the thought into their brain 20 years ago. This is what's happening. And I'll give you an example. I had a client who we were out in public. We were at a big event. He was a very high profiled individual. There were people all over him just flocking to him because he was very high profile. And I could tell that he was sick. I could tell that he was like stage 4 cancer. And I didn't know if he knew. And so I had a friend introduce me to him and I whispered in his ear, I said, I really need to talk to you about your health. And we set up a call. And so I went into his timeline and I could tell, I said, at age 19, there's a phrase in your brain that's repeated over and over again. I don't want to be here. I don't want to do this shit anymore. I'm wasting away and I've been betrayed. And I said, those things will cause exit strategies. And now you're in stage 4 cancer. And he said, yes, I am. And I haven't told anybody. I just found out about 2 weeks ago. And I said, well, what happened to you when you were 19 to make that phrase? And he said, I had just gotten drafted out of high school in Boston playing football. So I just got a full ride scholarship. I was looking to be drafted into the NFL. I was engaged to the high school, head cheerleader. It was the American dream in Boston. And then I broke my back. I broke my back so bad that I was in the hospital for 2 years in traction. So that phrase, I don't want to do this shit anymore and I'm wasting away. That's where that came from. And then his girlfriend, his fiance, cheated on him and betrayed him. So that's where that phrase came from. And he kept telling himself, I don't want to be here. I don't want to do this anymore. And so he never corrected that phrase in his brain. So what happens is the subconscious brain will start to find even more evidence to prove that that's correct. So then more and more things happen where he got betrayed, where he was wasting away, where he didn't want to do this anymore. And so that's how it happens. So I can see that in people, I can see that in companies, and I can see how I can correct it because I do have training in homeopathy, holistic medicine. Sometimes it's physical, sometimes it's emotional, sometimes it's spiritual. So it's all very, very different for everybody. But when it comes to like revelation, spiritual gifts, and development of those, totally different conversation. I think that everybody has them, and not everybody has them turned on. But the biggest thing is getting confirmation. Most people don't know how to get confirmation of something being real or true. And this world is very, very much told that we are easily deceived, unfortunately. And it's actually pretty hard to be deceived. And the world teaches very opposite of that. Like, I am naturally of light, period. I'm attracted to it. I love it. It's just who I am at the core of my being. So even if I was deceived, it would be very shortly because I'm seeking truth and light. I'm always looking for confirmation with God. I'm even testing God all the time. But people are told, like, how dare you? We believe in spiritual gifts, but how dare you have one? Right. So I see so many people having these supernatural experiences, but then everybody's like, ooh, be careful. She could be being deceived. But to be deceived is really like if somebody had an addiction, drug and alcohol every day, a brain injury, stuff like that. Those are things where it's easily being deceived. And if you're not looking for confirmation, if you're not a light and truth seeker, then sure, that can happen. But the majority of us are good and true and want to know the truth of things. So I wish that out of all the things, if we could break down that barrier that we're not so easily deceived and start to kind of inquire of those little spiritual promptings, those dreams, those feelings, those gut instincts, the intuition, all of that, people would be on such a different pathway. They would have like a supernatural ability to use in business, life, relationships, their children, all kinds of things.
Is there a lifestyle that you live that is more beneficial for developing the gifts that you can recommend? Do you meditate? Do you eat a certain diet?
Well, that's a great question. For years and years and years, I was addicted to revelation. And I did everything that I thought I could do to get it on demand. So I was spiritually and mentally clean in my lifestyle. And this is really important because of what I'm going to say after. So for about 17 years, I didn't watch rated R movies. I didn't listen to normal music. I was always in my scriptures. I was fasting. I was praying. I'd go camping by myself on top of mountains, having it out with God, fasting. I didn't cuss. I didn't drink coffee. I didn't drink alcohol. I didn't do any of those things. It was quite the boring life, to be honest. And again, I was isolated and alone. I was getting revelation, don't get me wrong, but I got to a point where if I did something wrong, even slightly, that I then felt unworthy of those gifts. And that's a problem because in all reality, we will never be worthy in our minds. You can meet the most righteous, cleanest person that does service and charity work, and they, in their minds, never believe they're worthy enough. And when we have that block, that will always keep us from our potential and our gifts. So one day I had it out with God and I said, I am sick of this. I am sick of trying to always be in this position to be blessed or to have these gifts or to get revelation. And I'm done. I'm done with this. I'm done doing all of this. And I said, are you willing to bless me when I'm not deserving of it? Because I'm never going to be deserving of it in my own mind. And I'm done doing all these extra things, paying tithing, giving, doing all this work and going in the woods for weeks, or whatever, right? And then he said to me, whoever you are is who I am. Are you willing to bless others when they don't deserve it? And I'm like, yeah, of course. So when I said that, he put me on blast and pointed out somebody in my life that was very close to me that had kept screwing me over. and that I had given up on. And I said, I'm not helping the person anymore. They keep screwing me over. And so he pointed that out to me. And he said, well, what about this person? And I was like, damn, okay. Uh, all right, you're really putting me on and I'm like, what are you saying to me? That what whoever I am is what I receive. Whoever I am is who I believe God is too. If I am somebody who is judging, if I am somebody who believes in justice and punishment, and so how many times do people think like, oh, all these bad things keep happening to them because they're not obviously not doing the right thing. Their God's trying to show them something or a lesson or whatever it is. Like any of those thoughts are who we also believe God is to us. And so if I'm a very neutral person, if I'm willing to bless and give no matter what, because that's the core of my character, then that's who God will be to me. It's a principle that is predicated on that. And so that really changed everything. So I was like, okay, well, I'm going to test you. So I went from one extreme of a lifestyle that was isolating. A lot of people didn't want to be around me because I was always wanting to be clean and pure in my thoughts, my energy, all of that stuff. And then I went one extreme to the other to test it out. And I'm going to tell you, to be honest, that going to one extreme to the other, I had the most profound experiences and I got to a place of complete neutrality and non judgment. I could walk into a strip club, I could walk into a bar, I could walk into anywhere now. And all I'm going to be hyper focused on is what is good, what is beautiful, and where somebody's at and how they got there. I don't see anything negative. I don't see anything dark anymore because of that extreme, both sides. I can see the worthiness on everything and everybody. And so now my lifestyle is different. Now let's just say that I'm in a dark hole, a valley where I feel like I'm not getting that connection. That's a big deal for people. I could be in a room as a public speaker speaking to 1,000 people. Every single one of them can tell me where their drop zones are on their phone. Like if they're on a conference call on their phone, they can tell me where the phone's going to drop off on that drive home. They can tell me what spot in their house is the fastest Wi Fi for a download. Every single one of them. Not one of them can tell me why they're dropping off spiritually, why they're not feeling connected to God, or when they are, where are their hot spots, when they get the fastest download and revelation from God, and why. So they know more about their phones and their internet than they do themselves, their spiritual connection, their spiritual antenna, and their relationship with supernatural things, which by far is so much more important. So understanding where that was. So for years, I had that extreme lifestyle thinking that that's where my antenna was, right? And then I had to go to the other extreme to really figure out what it was internally, mentally, physically, spiritually. I can be in any environment now, in any situation. I can ask a question and I have direct revelation now. So it's not one or the other. It's not that I need to sit and meditate and get on my knees and beg God anymore. I did that for years and I know, and that works. But there are also other ways also that are much easier, that are much more conducive to your lifestyle and the unconditional love. And that is where it's a sweet spot, I believe. And I teach people how to do that. I give them the shortcuts now.
And do you have angels or guides that you work with?
Mm, interesting enough, I was always against spiritual guides and angels. Not against, I just wasn't inviting of that because I felt like they were middlemen. And because I was always directly connected to God, um, and God has a very different definition for a lot of people, and that's 100% appropriate. Okay. God is really my heavenly family now, but I just never invited that in. Am I against that now? No. I think that we have a whole heavenly family or divine team that we're in collaboration with. So I used to look at God as being like much higher than me, but actually we're in a collaboration together. So whoever he and I or they and I decide is good to be in my collaboration team, if they approve it, if God approves this, then I'm open to it now. I might have somebody in my lineage that's an incredible healer that can come forth and teach me something. And if it's of truth and light, and I have set terms with God of what I'm willing to accept and what I'm willing to learn from what, it has to be a certain level of light and truth. And I have terms set to my energetic field, to my mind, to my environments. So if it reaches that criteria that I've already set with God, then I'm willing for that. Now, the issue that I see with a lot of clients who have spiritual guides, they automatically assume because they're a spirit guide that they're 100% truth and that they have their back on every angle. Or why would they be there? But I've seen people with many different spiritual guides, and I will test them to see how much of truth they are. And I can measure things in the quantum field out of 100%. I can scan them and see. And I'm like, this spirit guide is deceiving you. This one is very mischievous. And they're like, I've always thought that. And I'm like, well, you need to get rid of them. And they didn't know that they could do such things. So I think with anything, with God, with spirit guides, with angels, with anything supernatural, we have to test them out. You have to put them to a test. And that's 100% appropriate, even with God. And there's ways to do that. There's ways to figure out how much of truth and light it is out of 100%, or what the angle is, what their abilities are, what your relationship is with them beyond this world. And that's very important information. But not a lot of people know how to go about that or to test it or get confirmation, unfortunately.
With your experience with quantum physics, are you seeing that science is coming together with spirituality and starting to point in the direction that there is something more than this physical realm?
Yes, fortunately, I'm so grateful for that. And quantum physics, I always say, is really for really super smart people who are analytical to know that God is real and that supernatural things are real, because it's a way of explaining how it works, how God works, how source works, which is a very mysterious thing. So, quantum physics, I can explain God, and anybody takes my classes or clients that I'm mentoring, I explain it in three different ways to them. I can teach them one principle, but I explain it in science and quantum physics. I explain it in a spiritual, and then I back it up with scripture. So there are three different ways that the mind can perceive because we're all so different. But quantum physics is so easy to understand if the right person is explaining, right? And I can explain how things work in the quantum field in a very easy way, how manifesting works, how um, things in the scriptures are really just quantum physics, if people would just understand that. But I think it's starting to shift where we're combining science finally with supernatural things. And it's measurable now. I mean, even our brain waves are being measured 12 feet. And that is science that's proved, all the way from wave particles and how we can manipulate them by sound, by our voice, how water's programmable by the things that we think, the things that we say. I mean, anybody who is seeking to know truth about those things will find it. But those that are in tunnel vision and can't have the capacity to understand will never seek that out. They'll never understand. And that's totally okay too. But thank God for the ones that we are the seekers, that information is becoming very clear.
Let's take a step back to the beginning. How did you get involved in working with others? Well, I mean, you just have so many modalities that you're familiar with. But how did you get involved with the high profile clients and wanting to teach others how to, I guess you teach people how to develop their own gifts as well, right?
Absolutely. I have been pretty fortunate, and it was also something I was seeking out where, I was very divinely directed to do certain things at certain times, like the earthquake in Japan. Um, that got me onto a higher platform. That's actually what got me, on Discovery Channel and CNN and BBC, and I just started building traction that way. And then people would reach out to me. But since then, those high profile clients have referred me. I don't do any marketing, advertising. I'm very discreet. I have NDAs. I never name drop. And so that's something that's very much respected about me. I never talk about it. People, I have other businesses. I'm an entrepreneur. I do real estate investing. I do all these things. Those people don't even know what I do on the other. So I'm very discreet about it. And that's why like people have to ask me because I will not give them information that they're not seeking because I can overwhelm them. I can ship them at their core. And I won't do that unless they're really wanting that. So that's where some of that comes in. People will seek after me. It'll be a referral. I go to very special events where a lot of high profile are, like former presidents and governors and things like that. And I have helped, people get elected. And I can shift energy in companies to shift energy and an environment in the future, like all kinds of different things. And it's not that it sounds pretty woo woo, but again, it's just a lot of science mixed with the spiritual authority and power, and that's the difference: is having authority to do certain things. And that's another reason why I ask for permission, so that you give me authority to do so.
How do your visions or wisdom, how does that come to you? What does it feel like for you? Is it a vision? Is it something you hear?
They're all different. So future events, I have a pattern, and this is how it goes for me. So future events, I see things in domino effects. So, like for instance, I'll give you an example of something that's coming. Hopefully, this isn't too big, but I keep seeing this catastrophic earthquake in Utah, and it happens in fall, and it happens on a Monday morning or a Wednesday morning. I can't decipher which one it is, but it's first thing in the morning. And so I know that this is an event that kicks off all these other events, very big events around the world. Okay. Now, for me to know that that is real, this is how God works with me. And I've seen it from different angles. I've seen it in all kinds of different ways. I'm in different places in the United States when it happens. I've seen it on the news, all of it, right? But for me to test it, I will then get two similar visions and dreams about something that I would have no idea about. Maybe a friend that I haven't talked to in 10 years, and I'll watch her have a conversation in her living room with a housekeeper, like something so random. And it'll be very, very specific. And this is a real story. I had a vision and a dream about a friend I hadn't talked to in a long time who was arguing with her housekeeper about how much she hated the way she made her bed. And so I called her up and I was like, hey, by chance, did you just have a conversation about your housekeeper not making your bed? Like you hate the way she makes your bed. And she's like, oh my God, I was just complaining about that. I'm going to fire her over it. She's like, how the hell did you know? And I'm like, and I don't explain. I just say, okay, that's all I need to know. And then I had one more. So I always get two. I get two confirmations from random things like that. So I call the next person, hey, did you just do this? And they'll be like, yeah, how did you know? I'm like, okay, thank you. And then I can know that what I was seeing in the future is real because God knows my personality, that I need confirmation. I need to test things out. I'm discerning. I'm doing my due diligence. So future events, that's how it works for me. I see it in those dominoes. So that's just one event. And then from that, if that's a big event, I'll ask what will happen before that. And then I'll get another dream or another vision. And it's almost like a waking vision. You always can tell when you have a dream that's different. And sometimes it's symbolic, sometimes it's prophetic, sometimes it's revelation, but you can just tell the difference. All of us can, but I just inquire of it and then I do my due diligence. So with future events, if it's big, I will then seek and ask, show me some of the events that happened before that. So I know that how close this is. And then I'll have the same pattern will happen. Now, totally different when I'm looking at someone or I'm doing an intuitive reading or I'm checking a company, I feel it in my heart and my mind. So I'll have a thought, and then my body kind of gives me confirmation. And then I will muscle test, and I muscle test very differently than everybody else. Then I will say it to them to give me confirmation. I'll say one thing. What happened? This is the phrase again, you were 19 years old, and then they give me a confirmation, right? So I've already gotten a confirmation in my heart and my mind through muscle testing and through the client. And then that gives me permission that I'm on the right trail, the right track, and I keep going. And then, it gives me the confidence and the confirmation to keep going. Now, sometimes I'll get a premonition warning for my own personal life. And the way that I judge that is it'll keep coming and I'll just feel that pressure. Like, you need to hurry up and pray for this, or you need to hurry up and call this person. And it'll just kind of keep coming. And that's kind of my telltale sign. It's a little different for everybody. And that's something that we have to learn. And that's what I call our telltale signs. So we can be obedient to those spiritual promptings. And if you are, then you get more.
Very interesting. Do you have any messages for my viewers right now? Or is there any big events coming up that they should be aware of?
Ooh, I used to be called the doom and gloom girl when I did this for the government. Because people get fixated on the doom and gloom of future events. So I'm going to say this, that because I already mentioned that earthquake in Utah, that happens in the fall. I didn't say this fall because timelines can always change. And I can explain how timelines change if you want later. However, if that takes place, this is a major event to know that you better have your stuff together very, very quickly, meaning from supplies to whatever. Okay. But what I will say is no matter how prepared you are, no matter what supplies you have, whether you have $1 million bunker, none of it will matter unless you are spiritually guided. If you know how to listen, if you are teachable by the Spirit, so that you can receive revelation. And that revelation is what's going to guide you, teach you, protect you and your family. And you can start developing that antenna now. Like, hey, what should I be learning? What kind of books should I have as a reference if the internet went down? What kind of location should I be scouting out? Would I be staying here in my home if something happened, or would you want me to leave? And if you did, where would I go? Are there any types of medications, vitamins, supplements that I could have as an alternative to the pharmaceutical ones that I have currently? Because that might not be available. All of those are really good questions to ask. And I will say this, that if a 10-point earthquake happens, that also means a 10-point miracle and blessing will happen too. That means a 10-point awakening, a 10-point spiritual, just incredible opening happens to the world. And people get very fixated on, the destruction of things. But the destruction of things is such a refining process that it's getting us to the world that we've all dreamed of. And it's a very, very beautiful thing. So there are some big events taking place. I guide all of my students, my clients. We're all on, group chats, and I do Zooms anytime that I have new dominoes that are taking place as cues. And I've been always accurate about that. Just, I have about a 99% accuracy. Not always certainly like on the timeline, and I never give timelines just for that. I can give seasons and like morning or night, things like that, but timelines can change. But if people are interested in that, I can get into great, great details for it. No problem.
And let's talk about the timelines changing. Tell me how that can happen.
Oh, okay. Well, this is something I had to have it out with God about years ago. Okay. So let's just say that it's like set in stone that this earthquake's going to happen somewhere. and then I see it, and then something shifted, and I can feel that something shifted, that all of a sudden we have more time. And so this has happened, and I started to inquire. So what happens is people who are in influence, like mass amounts of influence. Let me ask you a question. Do you know what the actual definition of sin is?
Missing the mark?
And it's actually not, but I've actually heard people say that. The true definition of sin is the manipulation of free will, the agency to choose for ourselves. And the only time that can happen is when people are in position of power, meaning somebody in government, somebody who can have influence over millions of people and manipulate their choice to choose, especially if it's not for good. So when that happens, whether it's for good or for not so good, that can change a timeline. So let's just say that somebody made a decision like, I want to release a virus. That would manipulate a lot of people's choice to choose, correct? Okay.
Yes.
If that was to happen, there would be a catastrophic earthquake, might cause a lot of destruction, yes, but it would also have a blessing where it would have a divider to where a virus couldn't go this way. So those are things that change timelines. Those are just examples. So all of them have, a yin yang, an opposition kind of thing, but also a blessing and, what we would call darkness, right? Both equally as important and both equally good. So those are things, and because we have so many people in positions of power and influence in government and royal families that affect a lot of people, they can change timelines, unfortunately. And unfortunately, they're not always the best of people. And they can speed things up.
Tell me about frequencies. I interview quite a few near death experiencers, and they talk about quite a few of them say that the other side is more of a frequency than an actual place. So tell me about your take on frequency and what you've done to work with it.
Well, frequencies and quantum physics, like energy-based types of medicine, are my specialty. I think how it really kind of got started with frequencies for me is I got into biofeedback. And biofeedback is a pretty technological way of medicine. For people who aren't familiar with it, it's something it would help you to understand frequencies. But really, if you think about it like this, frequencies can be anything that exists in the quantum field, which Christians could call in God's eye, where everything exists, every thought, every dream, every knowledge, everything, right? And in that space that everything exists has a code or a frequency. And so, like, for instance, if you need an antibiotic, I could just give you the frequency of the antibiotic and I could keep uploading it to you until you have the transformation or the integration of that antibiotic. You wouldn't have any side effects. Your body would just have the frequency that it needs. So God created things spiritually and energetically first, and the physical followed. So let me explain that. Okay. So you can see my hands a little bit more. Okay. So everything in the quantum field that we were just talking about, where everything exists, they are particles. Just think of dust. Okay. Most of them are wave particles, and they're doing this. Okay. Now, let's just say that I'm meditating, I'm daydreaming, and I'm like, oh, I want this beautiful house with this white picket fence. Okay. So this wave particle's like, oh, I like that too. And then they start to build momentum. And then a bunch of them start to gather and then start to speed up. Okay. Now, if I sit here and think about it for 18 seconds, I'm creating momentum in those wave particles because it aligns to my frequency. Okay. Once that happens, those wave particles start to become a solid. This solid is what we consider planting a seed, okay? But it's in the quantum realm. It's still an energetic seed. But it doesn't matter. What do you do when you plant a seed? You water it, you nurture it, you give it sunshine, okay? So let's just say tomorrow, for another 18 seconds, I'm thinking about it again. I'm praying about it and asking God about that house. Well, I've already planted a seed here. Now, even more wave particles come along and then they start to keep planting seeds. They're nurturing it, giving it sunshine. The more that I can plant that and nurture it and give it sunshine, what happens is string theory. So then it goes from this seed, now it's starting to sprout, like in the real world. When it does that, it goes into the physical dimension. That's how people manifest things. That's how people pray and get results. That's why it takes a little bit of time. You don't just pray and it just immediately happens. It's rare. It happens, yes, depending on your ability and the need and how that seed was already planted before. Okay. So what happens is too many people are segueing too early on. They'll think, oh, I want that white picket house. And then they get distracted with something else. So there's still wave particles kind of aligning and all of that, right? But really, you can make all of those wave particles align, plant a seed, and manifest as into a physical. This is how God created worlds without number, energetically and spiritually first, and then the physical followed. That's why the earths and worlds take time to grow into what they are. And that's the same thing with us. So we can be co creators with God. A lot of us are. A lot of us have had many different experiences way before this world. But here in this world, we can do that now by understanding how the quantum field works. Now, to speed up the frequencies in the quantum field, to get wave particles to become a solid, you can amplify that by using your heavenly family, your spirit guides, and God. By using them as a team and collaborating with them, this is what I need and want, and I want you guys to fill in the gaps for me. Align this for me. Help me to align to the frequency of this. Because you already know it exists. You have all this dust everywhere. One little particle can be exactly what I need and want. It already exists somewhere. So help me to align to that frequency. Did you know that um, what happens in this is then quantum entanglement? Okay. So if I just created the seed and string theory went into physical, then what happens is I'm next to that energy field. It's next to me, and we start to have quantum entanglement. We do the same thing. So if Robin and Tia, or you say Tia, right?
Yes.
Um, sometimes I say Tia, so I just want to confirm. So if we're right next to each other, okay, and we're around each other for more than 20 minutes, remember it's like 16 to 20 minutes in the quantum field. So if our energy fields are next to each other, we start to build momentum. Same thing in the wave particles. And we start to do this. And then we speed up really, really fast. And then we start to spin around each other. And we're recalibrating each other. And that's what happens until I'm a part of you and you're a part of me. Quantum entanglement. This is why women get on the same menstrual cycles if they're around each other for too long. Okay. So the same thing happens in the quantum field with all those wave particles. It's becoming a part of me and I'm becoming a part of it. But I have to focus my time for just a little bit and I have to nurture it. And then I can amplify it with God, with spirit guides, and then quantum entanglement happens and it becomes a part of me and I become a part of it. That's why they say whatever you're seeking, it's seeking you. If you want to be a millionaire, hang out with millionaires. You are what you eat. It's just quantum entanglement. And it's also part of why the earth is going through the change that it's going through, because there's an astrological clock of where our earth's position is to where God is. I know that can get very far out conversation. However, the more that we are starting to shift in the astrological alignment of planets, the closer that we become the way that the earth is changing because it's quantum physics. When our earth was very first created, we were closest to God and where God lives. Okay. And when they talk about the fall, it was an astrological fall where we go over here And as we're coming back around, that's why we're going through these big changes now. And so that's what's happening. It's just quantum physics,
Mm.
quantum entanglement, really.
Yeah, I never thought about it like that. And the way you described it, you're right. You make quantum physics simple to understand, whereas, and that's kind of what they say, if you can't explain it so that someone else can understand it, that means you
And
don't
you don't know it.
understand it. And so the way
Yeah.
you explain it does make it very easy to understand. So that's awesome. Thank you so much for that. What about spooky action at a distance? Because that's something that's always kind of fascinated me, how there's two particles that can, they interact, they're like act as one particle across vast distances. Does that fit into this at all?
Sure, absolutely. Um, it's really basically the same thing. So let's just say in the wave particles that they were building momentum. Let's just say that that seed got planted in there, and this wave particle is way over here, and it's like, oh, I like that too. But he didn't have time to get all the way over there, but he aligned. This little particle aligned. So it already had the frequency, it just didn't get to attach. So energetically, all things are intelligent. And so that's how other things can be in sync together, but they don't have to physically be in the same space or the same time because they're all intelligent. So it already connected to it energetically or intelligently. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
In coral reef, I mean, they've been finding that everywhere where it like is in sync with another, it could be in a tub over here underneath my cupboard, and it's in sync with another coral reef way over here where they start to, mutate or spring or whatever they do. So it happens everywhere. But just think of all the things beyond this world and supernatural things that are aligned in that way too with us. It's very, very beautiful. One of the things that I've experimented with is you might have heard this before, is how we have like a one little speck of DNA of everybody. We have a cell of everybody on Earth. Have you ever heard that?
I haven't heard that, no.
Yeah, so like science is proving that we have like these little particles of DNA of like everybody. And so I'm like, oh, well, what I could do then is tune into that particle, that little piece of DNA. Like Julian Michaels, I really like her body. And I'd say, okay, I'm going to connect and reach out to that one particle and say, hey, I want you to teach, I want you to program all my other particles to have this type of structure, to have this type of metabolism, to have this type of whatever. It's already in me. So you can be very creative about those things and use quantum physics to speak to the other cells, other particles, whatever. And again, it can sound very woo woo, but it's just science. I could show you underneath a microscope, no problem. It's just something to play with. I always say, like, once I do this, I'm going to be 20 years younger and I'm going to look 20 years younger. And people are like, oh my gosh, they just see me and they're like, you look so much like 20 years younger. I'm like, oh, it's weird.
You talked a little bit about the timeline. Well, I don't know if it's timeline's the right word, but Earth coming back to where God is. Is that accelerating? Because I feel like, and a lot of people are saying they feel like
Yes.
that's accelerating. The vibration of the planet is changing faster than it was previous, like the prior 50 years.
Yes, the clock is ticking pretty fast. Um, God showed me a clock not too long ago, and on the hands of the clock, they were personal events for me. But he said, you are two events away from a catastrophic earthquake, an earthquake that you guys have never seen. And when that happens, this, and this happens. And with that, it's beautiful, but also very scary. That's why the scriptures talk about, they say it's a great and dreadful day, but it's actually originally, it should have been the great or dreadful day. So it's really, that's why I stress the most about your spiritual intellect and antenna needs to be developed. Anybody can develop it. Because if you don't, you're going to be caught in that dreadful side of things. But really, there's incredible things happening. People are going to be guided to go all kinds of locations where they collaborate together, and there's, doctors and resources and all of these things. And they're going to go, how did you guys get here? And they say, well, I just had a dream. I had a vision. and everybody starts connecting and like the world starts to heal. I mean, there's a lot of beautiful things that take place. So things are rapidly speeding up, and it's because of those people that I mentioned that are of an influence that know that our world is not sustainable. And this is the way I would like for people to look at this also. It's not that those people are necessarily evil and dark, because I think that word is misused too often. Let's just say there's somebody in high position in government that looks at our world thinking this is unsustainable for the human race. And they make a decision to depopulate, let's just say. They're thinking in their mind that they're doing the right thing. They have to justify that type of thinking. It's not that they're doing it for selfish reasons necessarily. Of course, there's people like that, right? But they believe that A, we can't tell anybody. They would never understand. It would cause mass panic. So they have to make decisions like that. And those types of decisions are being made. And that's why it's speeding up our timeline. That's why the clock is spinning so much more rapidly, because there's a consequence and an action to all things.
Can you give me some examples of some of the high profile? You gave one with uh, the person that was drafted and then broke their back. Do you have any other examples that you can give us while still maintaining their
Sure.
privacy?
Absolutely. There's a really healthy green drink that we're very familiar with. It's sold like everywhere. And one day, one of their sales just kind of plummeted. So they did all of the normal things. They repackaged, rebranded, even did some coupons at like natural grocers, things like that. Interviewed their customers to see why they weren't purchasing. And they thought it was just because there were so many new competitors and they were one of the originals. But now there were so many on the market that there were all these options. So they dropped their price point. They did all the normal things. And then one day somebody said, I want you to talk to this intuitive consultant, and who happened to be me. So on the phone call, and anybody who's ever worked with me, just so you know, when you get on a phone with me, I don't know anything about you. I don't want to know anything about you. You give me your name and permission. That's it. You don't tell me why you are on this call with me, nothing. And I will stop you immediately if you try. So they gave me their name, and in 15 seconds, I said, about 2 years ago, did you guys change your manufacturing facility? And they said, yeah, but that's not why we're calling. They're performing. That's not the issue. And I said, okay, just want to double check. And then I tap in because then now they gave me confirmation. Okay. So I look and I said, okay, well, you have this super healthy green drink that's alive. It can be manipulated because it's alive, it's energy. It's all organic, super healthy. I said, the facility that is packaging this for you and then distributing it out to your customers, yes, they're performing. On paper, they look great. But the owner of that facility is doing a bunch of shady deals on the side. He's doing a lot of shady stuff, as a matter of fact. This is almost like a cover for him. And because like attracts like, he hires individuals and employees that are cool with that shady stuff too. Not a lot of people are cool with that shady stuff. So you're talking about a very low vibration of people that are willing to do shady things on the side. So this is where your healthy green live drink is. Around this vibration of shadiness and darkness or whatever it is. Okay. And then it's going out to your customers. And I said, I bet you when you interviewed your customers, they didn't know why they weren't purchasing your drink anymore. And they said, no. I said, because it felt different. They didn't know why. It had nothing to do with price anymore. It just felt different. And so what I did is I created a plan, cleaned the energy of that facility, and then created a plan in the future of how they could have their own manufacturing facility. And then what happened is I increased their return about 38% in 6 months. So it's just one thing. So I see a lot of companies that hire, a CEO or hire people because of their background, their degrees, what college they went to. But really, they don't realize that companies are entities. That's why we register them as entities. And when they're entities, they have their own energetic field, which means it has its own life purpose. I have a life purpose, the entity has a life purpose, and we almost feed into each other. you'll notice that most of the most gifted people are business owners because it's so much growth. It's a vehicle to growth. My life purpose is feeding into this. So if you hire the wrong person that doesn't align to the life purpose of this entity, it'll drain down. It'll drain down into your company. And so it's a lot of things that companies don't look at. So I'm very fortunate that I'm spreading a lot and where I get to save companies and come in and I look at every department. Like I can, if they just give me a name and like a list of employee numbers, I can tell which one wants to kill themselves, which one has cancer, which one's having an affair, um, which whatever, committing fraud. And I can just feel and I say, hey, this person is draining into your department. He's your top leader and he wants to kill himself and nobody knows. So he's coming to work with a huge smile on his face, but really this is who he is and how he feels. And if we just shifted this one thing, it will change the whole entire department. So those are just little things that I do for corporations. And it matters. It really matters. And a lot more companies, I'm think about it. Google, Ford, Elon Musk are going to places like Burning Man now. And they're becoming very, and quite frankly, some of them have been interviewing people that know that they went to Burning Man because they know they have a different development now, a different type of sense that makes them a little bit out of the box. And companies are starting to look for that now, thank God. Not that Burning Man's like the best, but it's a very well-known thing for people to think outside the box now.
How does this affect your daily life when you go out to the grocery store or you go out to eat? Are you bombarded with
Mm,
information?
sometimes when I was younger, yes, it was harder for me. Um, I have 5 children and I go to the park with my kids and somebody would just kind of follow me around and want to dump on me, regurgitate their issues. And I didn't know why that was happening for a long time. And it's something that I've had to set terms to my energetic field to not allow that to happen anymore. I could go to a grocery store and I could see, that that woman was raped and and I could see if I tapped into it too much, I could see the rape, I could see the room, I could see everything. And then I would want to help her. But again, that's an invasion of privacy. Now, some people wear their hearts on their sleeves, and I can't help it. I can see it. But I have developed myself to where I don't do that anymore, unless it's like so available and everybody can almost see it, right? But it used to be extremely overwhelming. I would get a lot of information, and now I have just developed it to where it's appropriate because that way I can live my life and I'm not being manipulated by those types of things.
And if my viewers wanted to reach out to you if they have more questions or they wanted to hire you, how can they find you?
My website is amazingrobyn.com, but it's Robyn with a Y. And my cell phone number's on there. Either me or my assistant will get back to somebody immediately. I want everybody to have a chance to develop. I have very affordable classes that you can take. I help mentor people one on one. I mean, right now and where we are with this world, my greatest priority and all that I can offer at this point is raising their spiritual gifts and antennas. If I could do anything in the world that's going to create the greatest ripple, that's it. So that's my priority. I make it affordable for people. There's tons of different options. So they can reach out anytime with any questions. I love, love, love questions. So go for it.
And do you have any last words of wisdom for my viewers?
Hmm. We are never alone, ever, in any room. And even when something seems so dark and so defeating, just give it a day or two. And this too shall pass. And inviting something that is supernatural, even if you don't believe in it, is okay. You don't have to believe in God. You don't have to believe in anything supernatural. But if you just had a little hope that it could be real, is enough. And seeking that out to find out if something like that could be real when your time of need or your time of defeat or your time of darkness, it will shift everything. One prayer can change someone's whole entire life, not just for yourself, but even the homeless person across the street. It is the mighty pathway for change. So just experiment with it.
Oh, that is so beautiful. Thank you so much, Robyn. And thank you for taking the time to visit with me and have this conversation. I really appreciate it.
Oh, you're so welcome. You are doing great work here. I'm so glad you're sharing these things. And I will send you the best powerful energy I can so that your words and the things of your show can be spread in a very rapid way.
Thank you. That means so much. I appreciate that. Thank you for being here. I just want to tell you how much I appreciate you being here and supporting my channel. If you haven't already subscribed, please consider subscribing if you enjoy near death experiences and other spiritually transformative stories. It helps the algorithm know that this information is useful and push it out to more people. And that's the goal, to get as many people to know that we are eternal spiritual beings and that we never die. Our bodies might die, but our essence will never die. And I want people to live with less fear. Let's all spread the word. Like, comment, subscribe, share, hit that little notification bell so you get all the notifications when my videos post. Thank you for all of your support. I'm sending love to you.